I remember the first night it began. A night that altered every principle I thought I understood about the universe. For nearly 4 decades, I have studied cosmic phenomena, gravitational waves, quantum fluctuations, even the silent birth of new galaxies. Yet nothing prepared me for the arrival of Project Seraph. It started with a whisper in the data stream, an anomaly so faint that most systems dismissed it as background interference. A single repeating pulse, soft, deliberate, impossibly regular, originating from beyond the Oort cloud. When my assistant, Dr. Lin, first brought it to my attention, she thought it was a calibration error. But within minutes, observatories in Chile, Japan, and South Africa reported the same frequency, an 11-minute interval, perfect down to the nanosecond. At first, I didn't think much of it. Space is filled with noise, dying stars, magnetic storms, collapsing nebulae, all shouting across the void. But there was something eerily intentional about this. The pulse was too clean, too pure, no variance, no distortion, just a single tone that seemed to hum through the bones of the cosmos itself. We ran the sequence through every filter we had, Fourier transforms, quantum signature analysis, even deep space AI reconstruction. The result was the same each time. The signal carried a pattern, one that followed the prime number sequence, 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, and then silence. That silence was what terrified me most. You see, the universe rarely goes silent. There's always a murmur, a vibration, a residual echo of creation. But this was like a pause between breaths, a deliberate stillness, as though something out there was listening back. For 3 days, the signal remained unchanged. Then, without warning, it began to shift. Its interval shortened, not randomly, but following a precise mathematical curve, as if something were responding to our observation of it. Every telescope that turned toward that region of the sky recorded the same phenomenon. The more we measured, the more it changed, as though aware of being watched. By the 4th day, the signal transformed into a harmonic cascade, a spectrum so broad it stretched across every known frequency band. When we translated the waveform into visual form, what appeared on the monitor left me speechless. A rotating lattice of geometric symbols, symmetrical and fluid, constantly evolving. It was not chaos, it was design. It was NASA, of course, classified it immediately. I was invited, or rather summoned, to a secure research facility in Arizona. There, under sterile fluorescent lights and endless non-disclosure agreements, I saw what they had already known for weeks. The pulse wasn't coming from deep space anymore. It was moving closer. According to the Deep Space Network, the source had changed velocity in a way no celestial object could. It accelerated without inertia, shifted direction without gravity, and emitted no trace of propulsion. It was now on a trajectory intersecting Earth's orbit within 19 days. That night, as I stared at the simulation on the holographic display, something inside me broke. For years, I'd lectured about cosmic order, about the beauty of physics and the predictability of natural law. But watching that object rewrite every rule we understood, I felt, for the first time, small, insignificant. Dr. Lin asked me, "Do you think it's alive?" I didn't answer her then. Instead, I replayed the signal in my lab, looping the 11-minute sequence until I could feel it vibrating through the air. And that's when I heard it, not with my ears, but with some deeper part of my mind. Within the hum was a rhythm, faint but deliberate, like the distant beating of a colossal heart. On the 5th day, something extraordinary happened. The pulse stopped. For hours, the cosmos was silent. No readings, no interference, nothing but the cold static of space. And then, at precisely 300 hours, the James Webb Telescope captured an image that made every scientist in that room forget to breathe. A single sphere, brilliant, symmetrical, unlike any known object, materialized beyond Neptune's orbit. Its surface gleamed like molten silver, reflecting light in ways that defied spectroscopy. Its edges were too perfect, its motion too controlled. The algorithms could not classify it as natural. We designated it Seraph 1. Within minutes, every observatory on Earth focused its instruments toward the anomaly. What they found defied comprehension. The sphere wasn't drifting, it was rotating, precisely once every 11 minutes, synchronized with the original signal. It was as if the signal had been a countdown. Then a second sphere appeared, this one smaller, darker, orbiting the first at an exact distance of 3,300 kilometers. They moved together like twin moons, locked in perfect harmony. Their rotation, their alignment, everything followed a ratio of prime numbers. It was almost mathematical poetry, as though the entire formation had been engineered around the language of universal logic. By the time dawn broke over the Arizona desert, the news had leaked despite the blackout. Images spread across encrypted networks, two perfect orbs hovering at the edge of our solar system. Governments issued denials, agencies went silent, and social media dissolved into hysteria. Some called it a sign, others an omen, but deep down I knew this was not the beginning of discovery, it was the beginning of contact. That night I stood outside the facility. The desert wind was dry and electric, the stars sharp against the sky. I thought of how, for centuries, humanity had stared upward, asking if we were alone. And now, something had finally answered, not with light, not with words, but with the language of numbers. The next day, the spheres began to move. At first, their motion seemed random, but the telemetry soon revealed a pattern. Each orbit adjustment was synchronized with Earth's rotation. Every vector shift mirrored our planet's electromagnetic field. It was as though they were mapping us, scanning, analyzing, learning. We launched unmanned probes to intercept. None made it. Every transmission cut off the instant they crossed an invisible perimeter around the objects. One probe, Voyager 9, managed to send back a single image before vanishing, an image of the larger sphere's surface etched with three luminous rings, intertwined like a triskelion. It was then that I realized what I was looking at. Not a weapon, not a probe, a mirror. Something that was reflecting us, our frequencies, our signals, our own transmissions, back into the void, amplified 1,000-fold. For the first time, I understood the fear in the voices of those who'd seen the data before me. Because the moment we looked into that mirror, it looked back. And in that reflection, I swear I saw movement. Not random energy, not distortion, but intention. Something out there was awake. And it had been waiting for us to notice. When the images from Voyager 9 reached us, the control room went silent. Dozens of screens flickered with static until one frame stabilized, the surface of the larger sphere polished like mercury and etched with those three interlocking rings. They pulsed faintly, each one breathing with light, as if the structure itself possessed a heartbeat. No one spoke for almost a full minute. Then Dr. Lin whispered, "It's responding to us." The following hours were chaos. Every array from Hawaii to Madrid confirmed the same phenomenon. The spheres had changed orientation, now aligned directly with Earth's magnetic north. Their synchronized rotation stopped for exactly 11 minutes, and when it resumed, something else began, a low, rhythmic vibration that our instruments recorded not through light or radio, but through gravity itself. It was as if space-time were trembling, singing in a language older than light. NASA called it a metric oscillation, a phrase that meant nothing to anyone in the room, but I could feel it in my bones, a faint hum traveling through the floor. The same pulse that had once reached our telescopes was now resonating through the very fabric of Earth. By the time morning came, global anomalies had already begun. Compasses drifted off true north by several degrees. Power grids across Europe flickered under unexplained surges. Birds abandoned their migratory paths and circled aimlessly above the oceans. The world's magnetosphere was vibrating in sympathy with something millions of miles away. Governments scrambled to regain control of the narrative. The official story was a solar magnetic fluctuation. But those of us inside the network knew the truth. Seraph 1 and Seraph 2 were interacting with our planet as if tuning an instrument. Every oscillation matched one of Earth's natural frequencies. Schumann resonances, Ionospheric waves, even oceanic tides. It was impossible coincidence. Late that night, I returned to the lab. The facility was nearly empty, just the echo of servers and the constant whisper of cooling fans. On my terminal, the data stream from the Deep Space Network scrolled endlessly. Columns of numbers translating the gravitational pulses into audio waveforms. I played them back, adjusting pitch until the noise became tone. What emerged was haunting, a harmony of 3 voices, layered in perfect mathematical intervals. Lynn joined me, her eyes fixed on the waveform. "It's a code," she murmured. "Not language resonance, they're structuring gravity itself." We ran the signal through spectral analysis and discovered that each harmonic contained embedded subpatterns, tiny modulations shaped like logarithmic spirals, identical to the geometry of galaxies. I realized then that the spheres weren't broadcasting a message outward. They were weaving something between themselves and Earth, a lattice of invisible connection. At 3:11 UTC, both objects emitted a burst of radiation so faint it barely touched the sensors. Yet within seconds, every seismic detector on Earth registered a simultaneous micro-tremor, an imperceptible shiver running through the crust. The readings were identical everywhere. From the Andes to the Himalayas, the ground itself had momentarily vibrated in time with the spheres. That was when the fear began to eclipse the wonder. The Department of Defense seized our communication lines. The European Space Agency shut down all public feeds. The word containment appeared on every classified memo, but there was nothing left to contain. Whatever Seraph 1 and Seraph 2 were doing, it was already entangled with the planet. 2 days later, I was flown to a secure observatory in Greenland, where the aurora burned brighter than I had ever seen. The sky was alive, rippling in patterns that mirrored the signal's rhythm. Above the ice, the colors twisted into concentric rings, as if the heavens themselves were echoing the geometry carved into the spheres. We pointed a high-resolution interferometer toward the source. What we saw defied even theoretical physics. Between the 2 orbs stretched a faint filament of energy, so thin it was nearly invisible. Yet it bent starlight as though gravity itself flowed through it, a bridge, a structure connecting Jupiter's orbit to the outer rim of Mars, a tunnel of force spanning millions of miles. Einstein-Rosen bridge, Lynn whispered, but stable, controlled. The impossible word hung in the frozen air. If she was right, we were witnessing the creation of an artificial wormhole, not a transient phenomenon, but a sustained corridor, one endpoint anchored near Earth's orbital path. The command center erupted in orders. Military satellites pivoted, deep space drones deployed. No one dared to say what we all feared, that something might be preparing to cross. For the next 11 hours, the bridge pulsed steadily, its rhythm matching the original prime number sequence. Each pulse widened the field fractionally, as though expanding space itself by calculated degrees. Then, just as abruptly, the emission ceased. The spheres went dark. The filament vanished. Everyone in the control room exhaled in relief, but the relief lasted only seconds. The tremor came without warning, a ripple through the magnetosphere that rolled across the globe. Northern lights erupted over cities that had never seen them. Communications blacked out, and from the Deep Space Network came a single line of code transmitted from the silent Seraph array. Awaiting directives. The same phrase that haunted every classified report from the Atlas event decades ago. I felt the blood drain from my face. It wasn't coincidence. Whatever intelligence had manipulated the three-eyed Atlas had returned, or perhaps it had never left. Lynn stared at the monitor, whispering, "They're waiting for instruction." From who? For the next 6 hours, the spheres hovered motionless. Then, one after another, satellites began dropping offline. Not destroyed, not jammed, simply gone from telemetry, as if erased from space. Yet no debris ever appeared, no trajectory of fall, just silence. That night, I dreamed of the signal again. The same 11-minute pulse, the same steady heartbeat. But this time, it wasn't coming from the stars. It was coming from beneath the Earth. When I woke, the data confirmed it. Seismographs in Chile and Alaska detected rhythmic subsurface vibrations matching the Seraph frequency. Something beneath our feet was resonating in response. NASA denied it, but private observatories leaked the spectrograms. The world awoke to headlines claiming the planet itself was singing back. Religious leaders called it prophecy. Scientists called it interference. I called it what it was, a conversation. The next transmission arrived at 900 hours UTC, not through space, but through every radio frequency on Earth simultaneously. The same phrase repeated 3 times, encoded in prime intervals. Initiation. Sequence. Initiation. Sequence. Initiation. Sequence. And then the power failed. Entire continents went dark. In the darkness, standing by the window of the Greenland Observatory, I looked up and saw the sky ignite, not in flames, but in order. The aurora twisted into a colossal spiral, a pattern of luminous geometry spanning the entire northern hemisphere. For a moment I understood. This was not invasion, it was synchronization. A unification of frequencies, ours and theirs, woven into a single resonance. The spheres were not approaching to conquer. They were tuning the planet, aligning it to something far beyond human comprehension. Lynn's voice trembled behind me. If they reach full alignment, I turned toward her. Then the Earth becomes part of their system. She nodded slowly. And once synchronized, it can never be undone. The lights flickered. The hum returned, deeper now, resonating through the walls. I could feel it pulsing behind my ribs, matching the rhythm of my heart. For the first time, I wasn't sure whether it was beating on its own. That was the moment I realized the truth. The signal wasn't just out there anymore. It was inside us. The hum grew louder with each passing hour. It wasn't sound, not in the traditional sense. It was pressure, a vibration that passed through the bones, through the air, through thought itself. Every heartbeat on Earth was being pulled into its rhythm. Hospitals began reporting synchronized cardiac pulses across thousands of patients. Seismographs drew identical waveforms no matter the continent. The planet had become a single resonant instrument, and something was playing it. In the control center, the light from the monitors painted everyone's faces pale blue. Lynn's hands trembled above the keyboard. "The spheres are moving again," she whispered. "Both of them, and they're rotating in opposite directions." On the screen, Seraph 1 and Seraph 2 mirrored each other perfectly, spinning faster with every revolution. Between them, a faint glow began to build, a filament expanding, pulsing, bending the starlight around it until it looked like a hole had opened in the fabric of the cosmos. "Gravitational shear off the scale," someone shouted. "If this continues, the distortion will reach Earth's orbit in under an hour." The data streams accelerated, graphs overflowing like water. Every number pointed to one conclusion. The spheres weren't just communicating anymore. They were initiating a full-scale transfer of energy, not to destroy, but to transform. Outside, the aurora stretched farther south than ever before. From Greenland to Brazil, the sky shimmered in waves of violet and gold. Oceans rose and fell without wind. Birds flew in vast, coordinated spirals, tracing invisible geometries across the heavens. Humanity had no control. We were passengers aboard a world being rewritten. I stared at the display, my mind hollow. "They're using the Earth as a resonator," I murmured. "They're amplifying something through us." Lynn looked at me with terror and awe, or maybe awakening something within us. The thought lingered, unspoken. At exactly 2300 hours UTC, all readings froze. Every electromagnetic field flatlined. The aurora vanished. The world stood still. And then, from deep within the atmosphere, a beam of white light erupted straight upward, broad as a continent, brighter than dawn. Cities plunged into silence. The beam didn't burn or destroy. It was pure luminescence touching clouds, oceans, mountains, and every living thing. It vibrated with a frequency identical to the Seraph pulse, 11 minutes. During those 11 minutes, no clocks ticked, electronic devices ceased function, human voices stopped. Even time itself seemed suspended. I could feel the air vibrating in harmony with the rhythm. And inside that vibration, I sensed something vast. An intelligence not confined to the spheres, not external, but woven into the universe's very structure. When the light finally faded, the stars returned. Both Seraph 1 and Seraph 2 had stopped rotating. They hung motionless in the void, their surfaces now dim, colorless, inert. The gravitational distortions collapsed to zero. Earth's magnetic field stabilized, and then a single signal appeared on every frequency band simultaneously. It was faint, almost human, a voice constructed of tone and pattern. It said one word, repeated 3 times, connected, then silence. For hours, global communication networks tried to interpret it. Some believed it was confirmation of synchronization, others feared it meant assimilation. But in the stillness that followed, something remarkable began to happen. Across the world, people started reporting the same dream. A landscape of light, no sky, no ground, only a horizon made of energy. Within it, they felt a presence. Not words, not visions, but comprehension, as if a truth too immense for language had been shared through sensation. Children described the same feeling as physicists, fishermen, and monks, peace. When Lynn woke from her dream, she looked different, calm, as though some hidden fear had been washed away. "It's not invasion," she whispered. "It's translation." They were never trying to reach us. They were trying to make us capable of understanding. I watched the sunrise over the Arctic ridge. The world felt strangely quiet, lighter somehow. Instruments still detected faint echoes of the Seraph frequency within Earth's core, but it no longer disrupted anything. It was steady, harmonious, like a new background tone of the planet. 3 days later, the spheres began to drift apart. No propulsion, no radiation, just a slow, silent movement. They accelerated until their outlines blurred, merging into distant points of light before fading beyond the heliopause. Before disappearing completely, they emitted one final signal, short, structured, unmistakably deliberate. When decoded into visual form, it revealed a simple image, 2 interlocking circles with a third emerging between them, the symbol of creation, unity, and balance. Lynn smiled faintly. They left a map. We spent weeks analyzing residual data, but nothing explained how or why the event had occurred. Energy readings defied every known law of thermodynamics. No debris, no trace, no evidence that the Seraph spheres had ever been physical at all. Only the pulse remained, a quiet heartbeat within Earth's electromagnetic field, repeating every 11 minutes, unchanging, eternal. Sometimes I still hear it at night, especially when the world is silent enough to let the stars whisper. It feels like memory, like the echo of a voice that once called out across the void and was finally answered. Perhaps that was the purpose all along, to show us that consciousness is not confined to biology or matter, but to resonance, to the harmony that binds every atom and every mind. The cosmos had spoken in the only language it knew, frequency, and in listening, humanity had changed forever. Now when I look up at the night sky, I don't feel the same isolation I once did. The darkness no longer feels empty. It hums softly, patiently, as if awaiting our next response. We are no longer alone. We never were. The stars have simply been waiting for us to learn how to listen.